She was mocked for her old dress. Imagine walking into a restaurant wearing the only dress you own, the one that carries your memories, not your status. You smile, trying to blend in, but whispers rise around you. Eyes scan your clothes, not your heart. And before you even sit down, someone tells you that you don't belong there. This is the story of Sarah, a woman who came to a simple dinner only to face the cruelty of appearances. She was laughed at, dismissed, and humiliated for what she wore. But in that moment of silence, when everyone turned against her, a voice echoed through the room. A calm, powerful voice that said, "She doesn't need your approval, because she's my wife." And suddenly, the world froze. That man wasn't just defending her. He was the billionaire everyone in that restaurant dreamed of meeting. And the same people who mocked her minutes before now looked at her with disbelief and regret. But Sarah didn't smile in victory. She smiled in pain, because no amount of wealth could heal what judgment had broken. This story isn't just about money. It's about every person who's ever been told they're not enough. Every heart that's been measured by appearance instead of character. It's a reminder that kindness is worth more than gold, and that sometimes the richest souls wear the simplest clothes. So before this story begins, take a deep breath and ask yourself, how many times have you judged someone without knowing their journey? How many times have you mistaken humility for weakness? If you've ever felt unseen, unappreciated, or underestimated, this story is for you. Because today, justice isn't served with revenge, but with dignity. Subscribe to this channel if you believe stories like this can change lives. Leave a comment below telling us where you're listening from. Together, we can share these voices across the world and remind everyone that compassion is the real luxury. Now, close your eyes for a moment. Picture Sarah standing in that restaurant, surrounded by judgment. Feel her pain, and then feel the power of what happens next. Because what starts as an act of cruelty will turn into a revelation that changes everything. The old dress. Rain tapped softly against the window of the crowded restaurant. Sarah sat alone at a corner table, staring at the empty coffee cup in front of her. Her dress was old, faded, and slightly torn at the hem. It was the only one she had left from her days working at the small bookstore. Now, after months of unemployment, she could barely afford rent. But today was supposed to be special. Her best friend, Emily, had invited her to a reunion with their old classmates. Sarah hesitated for days, unsure if she should go, but finally decided to show up. She told herself it didn't matter what she wore. What mattered was her heart. Yet deep inside, she knew people would notice. And they did. As soon as Sarah entered, the whispers began. The women dressed in sparkling gowns turned to look, their smiles thin and cruel. Emily ran to greet her, but even she looked surprised. "Sarah, you came," she said, her tone mixed with relief and discomfort. Sarah smiled nervously. "Of course. I missed everyone." At a nearby table, a group of men laughed loudly. One of them, Richard, leaned back in his chair and smirked. "Is that Sarah? Did she come straight from a thrift store?" The others burst out laughing. Sarah heard it, but she pretended not to. She took a seat quietly, trying to hide her trembling hands beneath the table. The waiter came by, his eyes scanning her worn-out dress. He sighed impatiently. "Ma'am, this table is reserved for our premium guests. Could you please move to the back?" Sarah blinked, confused. "But I was invited here." "I'm sorry," he interrupted, "but we have image standards. Please don't make this difficult." The whole restaurant turned silent. Sarah's face burned red. She stood up slowly, clutching her small purse. "It's fine," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'll just leave." Just as she turned, A deep voice came from the entrance. "Wait." The entire room turned toward the door. A tall man in a black suit walked in, confident, composed, eyes sharp like steel. Presence alone changed the air. The waiter froze mid-step. The man walked straight toward Sarah. "Is there a problem here?" he asked calmly. The waiter stuttered. "Sir?" She was sitting in the premium section without authorization. The man looked at Sarah, her eyes lowered, shoulders trembling. And then back at the waiter. "Without authorization?" he repeated softly. He then took Sarah's hand and said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear, "She doesn't need authorization. She's my wife." The room went dead silent. Richard's smirk vanished. Emily gasped. The waiter's face turned pale. "Yes, sir." "I didn't know." "That's the problem," the man interrupted. "You didn't care to know." He turned to Sarah. "Come on, love. Let's sit." They sat together as everyone watched, whispers rising again, this time full of regret. The billionaire, known by everyone as Ethan Cole, owner of the Cole Group, called the manager. "Bring your best wine. And maybe next time, teach your staff what respect looks like." Sarah sat quietly, still processing everything. She hadn't seen Ethan in weeks. His schedule was always full. She didn't even know he was back in town. He turned to her with a gentle smile. "You shouldn't have to face this alone," he said softly. "Never again." That night, the people who mocked her couldn't meet her eyes. Sarah realized something powerful. Wealth doesn't shine through clothes. It glows through dignity. Ethan didn't defend her because of pity. He did it because love, when true, never asks for appearances, only heart. But deep down, Sarah knew the night was far from over. Because behind the smiles, someone was plotting something far darker. And what began as humiliation would soon turn into a test of loyalty, greed, and love. The whisper of doubt. The night after the restaurant incident, Sarah couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the moment Ethan called her his wife. It wasn't a lie. They had married 2 years earlier in a small private ceremony, long before his company became one of the top corporations in the world. But she had chosen a quiet life, away from luxury, away from the spotlight. She didn't want to be treated differently. Still, she never imagined the world would treat her with such cruelty because of an old dress. Ethan entered their room quietly, his tie loosened, eyes soft with concern. "You're still awake," he said, sitting beside her. Sarah nodded. "It's just the way they looked at me. Like I was less than them." Ethan took her hand. "People measure worth by what they see. But I fell in love with what can't be seen. Your heart, your strength." Sarah smiled faintly, but her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to embarrass you." Ethan shook his head. "You could never embarrass me." He looked out the window at the city lights. But maybe this was a reminder that money can't buy humanity. We can have everything and still lose empathy. The next morning, headlines spread across social media. Asterisk mystery woman at Cole's dinner. Who is she? Asterisk paparazzi. Photos showed Sarah's old dress, alongside cruel comments. Some called her unfit for a billionaire. Others speculated she was a charity case. Sarah tried to ignore it, but the noise grew louder. Brands began calling Ethan's office, some offering sponsorship deals to upgrade her image. Ethan refused. All of them. Meanwhile, at the same restaurant, Richard, the man who mocked her, was bragging to his friends. "You should have seen her face. She didn't belong there. Even if she's married to a billionaire, class doesn't change overnight." His words dripped with arrogance. But one of his colleagues, a quiet man named Daniel, frowned. "You don't know what real class is, Richard. You just proved it." That afternoon, Sarah received a letter. No return address. Inside was a simple note. Asterisk, be careful who you trust. Not everyone in your husband's circle is loyal. Asterisk, her heart skipped a beat. She showed it to Ethan, who read it carefully. This handwriting looks familiar, he murmured. But before he could think further, his assistant called. Sir, urgent issue. The board meeting is moving up. There's talk of an internal leak. Ethan's eyes darkened. A leak? He repeated. Sarah placed a hand on his arm. You think it's connected? He didn't answer. In the business world, power attracts enemies, and now it seemed someone wanted to hurt them both. Days later, Ethan had to attend a high-profile charity gala. Sarah hesitated to go, but he insisted. Let them see who you really are, he said. Not the woman in the old dress, but the woman I chose, not for wealth, but for wisdom. She finally agreed. At the gala, the lights sparkled and cameras flashed. Sarah walked beside Ethan in a simple, elegant gown, still modest, but graceful. Whispers followed her, but this time they were softer. Until one woman, Vanessa, Ethan's ex-business partner, stepped forward. So this is the famous Sarah, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You clean up nicely. Ethan's expression turned cold. Vanessa, he said curtly. I didn't expect you here. Oh, I never miss a show, she replied. Then she leaned closer to Sarah. Enjoy your spotlight, dear. It fades faster than you think. She walked away, leaving behind a trail of perfume and poison. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She turned to Ethan. What did she mean? He sighed. Vanessa was once a partner, until greed ended it. She'd do anything to ruin me now. Sarah looked down. And I just gave her more reason. Ethan cupped her face gently. You are not my weakness, Sarah. You're the reason I stay strong. Yet, as the night went on, a strange feeling crept into Sarah's heart. The whisper of doubt. She didn't know it yet, but Vanessa's words weren't empty. Something dangerous was already in motion, and the next time Sarah faced the world, it wouldn't be over a dress. It would be over her very identity. The betrayal in silence. 3 days after the gala, Ethan left for an urgent business trip to Geneva. The atmosphere in their mansion felt heavier than ever. Sarah wandered through the quiet halls, the sound of her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. The note she had received still haunted her. Be careful who you trust. The words replayed in her mind like a warning she couldn't shake off. The staff had always been polite, but lately she noticed whispers stopping when she entered a room. The head maid avoided eye contact. One morning, as Sarah passed the kitchen, she overheard 2 workers talking in hushed voices. She doesn't fit in here, one said. He'll realize soon enough, replied the other. Sarah's heart ached, but she kept walking, pretending she hadn't heard. Later that afternoon, she received a call. The voice on the other end was soft but unsettling. Mrs. Cole, this is from the finance department. We've detected unusual transactions for one of your accounts. Can we confirm it's you? Sarah frowned. I haven't used any account recently. The caller hesitated. Then you might want to check immediately. It's a large amount, several million. Her hands trembled as she hung up and rushed to Ethan's study. She opened his safe, the one he had shown her the code to, only to find documents missing. Bank papers, contracts, even some personal letters. Panic flooded her. She called Ethan, but his phone went straight to voicemail. A knock on the door startled her. It was Daniel, the quiet man from the restaurant who had defended her once. Mrs. Cole, he said cautiously, Mr. Ethan asked me to bring you these. He handed her a sealed envelope. Inside were copies of transaction slips, each showing transfers made under her name. Sarah's voice shook. This isn't me. Someone's framing me. Daniel nodded slowly. I believe you, but others might not. These were sent to the board of directors this morning. Her knees. Weakened? The board? They'll think that you're trying to take money out of the company, Daniel finished grimly. At that moment, her phone buzzed with notifications. News sites were already publishing stories. Billionaire's wife involved in financial misconduct. Pictures of Sarah appeared online. Again, this time not mocking her dress, but accusing her integrity. The same faces who once laughed at her now demanded answers. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Ethan will fix this, she whispered. He'll explain everything. But that evening, another blow came. Ethan's lawyer, Mr. Harris, arrived. At the mansion. Mrs. Cole, he said coldly. Mr. Ethan is unavailable. In his absence, the board has temporarily frozen all joint accounts and revoked access to company assets. It's a precaution. A precaution? Sarah repeated, stunned. He avoided her gaze. There's talk of fraud investigations. I'm sorry. She felt her world crumble. Everything she had believed, her marriage, her trust, her place, suddenly felt fragile. Daniel stayed behind as the lawyer left. This isn't Ethan's doing, he said quietly. But someone close to him is playing a dangerous game. Sarah nodded weakly. Vanessa, she murmured. She warned me the spotlight fades. Maybe she meant to destroy me. The following night, Sarah sat alone on the balcony, looking at the stars. The city glowed beneath her, cold and distant. She thought of how quickly people's opinions changed, from sympathy to suspicion. In a world obsessed with wealth, truth often came second. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, money can build empires, but it can also build walls, between hearts, between trust. Downstairs, Daniel received a message on his phone. Keep her safe. I'm on my way. It was from Ethan. Relief washed over him. But he didn't know that another car had just entered the property. One driven by Vanessa herself, her smile sharp as glass. The real game of betrayal was just beginning. Shadows of deception. The night Vanessa arrived, the mansion's air turned tense. Her heels echoed sharply on the marble floor as she entered uninvited, her red dress catching the dim light like fire. Sarah stood near the stairs, her heart pounding. What are you doing here? She asked. Vanessa smiled, her tone dripping with mock sweetness. Relax, dear. I just came to talk. After all, we share something in common. Ethan. Sarah stiffened. You share nothing with him, Vanessa chuckled. Oh, I wouldn't say that. We built that empire together until he decided to bring you into it. She stepped closer, her perfume strong and suffocating. Tell me, Sarah, do you even know how much power you really have? Or did you marry him thinking love alone could protect you? Sarah's voice trembled. I don't need power. I just need honesty. Vanessa's smile hardened. Honesty doesn't keep people like you alive in our world. She placed a file on the table. Inside that, you'll find proof that the transactions came from your account. Maybe you didn't make them, but the world doesn't care. Perception is stronger than truth. She leaned closer. When the board decides, Ethan will have to choose his company or you. Sarah's hands shook as she opened the file. The documents looked authentic. Bank seals, signatures, all perfect. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Vanessa's eyes glimmered with cold amusement. Because, darling, Ethan took everything from me. My position, my respect. Now, I'll take everything from him. And you? You're the easiest target. Before Sarah could respond, Daniel entered the room. Vanessa, you're not welcome. Here, Vanessa turned slowly. Ah, The loyal shadow, she said mockingly. Still following orders? Daniel's eyes narrowed. I protect those who deserve it, Vanessa smirked. And yet, you serve a man who once betrayed me. How noble. She turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Oh, Sarah, she added. Over her shoulder, watch the people around you. Loyalty changes faster than fortune. After she left, Daniel locked the door and turned to Sarah. She's not bluffing. If those papers reach the board, they could destroy both of you. Sarah felt dizzy. Then we have to prove it's false. We will, he said firmly, but we must act fast. Someone on the inside helped her. The next morning, Sarah woke to news she couldn't believe. Ethan's flight had been delayed due to a sudden security alert. Someone had tampered with his documents. The connection was clear. Vanessa's reach was longer than they thought. Sarah called him immediately. Ethan, you're in danger, she said breathlessly. He answered calmly, though tension filled his voice. I know. Someone inside leaked my schedule. Stay with Daniel. Don't trust anyone else. Sarah's fear grew with every hour. By afternoon, she noticed unfamiliar cars parked. Near the gate, men in suits waited silently, pretending to be security. When she confronted one, he said, Company audit, ma'am. But his badge was fake. Daniel pulled her back inside. They're not from the company, he said grimly. They're here to intimidate you. That evening, the power went out. Across the mansion, darkness swallowed the hallways. Sarah lit a candle and moved cautiously through the corridors. In the flickering light, she saw a shadow move, tall, fast, and deliberate. Who's there? She called out. No answer. Then a hand grabbed her shoulder. She gasped, almost dropping the candle, but it was Daniel. Stay close, he whispered. We're not alone. They followed the faint sound of footsteps to Ethan's office. The door was open. Inside, papers were scattered everywhere. The file Vanessa had left was gone. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. She was here, Daniel said. Or someone. Working for her. He turned to Sarah, his voice firm. We need to leave. Now. Sarah nodded, clutching her phone. As they stepped outside, headlights flashed in the driveway. A black car sped away into the night. Sarah didn't know it yet, but what was stolen wasn't just evidence. It was something far more personal. Something that could destroy Ethan completely. The fall of trust. Rain poured over the city as Sarah and Daniel drove away from the mansion. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up with the storm, but Sarah's thoughts were louder than the thunder outside. Everything was unraveling. Her reputation, Ethan's company, and now their safety. Where are we going? She asked, gripping her seatbelt. To the old villa near the coast, Daniel replied. Ethan used it for private meetings. It's secure. Hours later, they arrived at the villa. The ocean waves crashed against the cliffs below, the sound echoing through the empty rooms. Sarah sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames. Daniel stood nearby, speaking quietly into his phone. Yes, I've got her. No one followed us. After a pause, he said, Tell Ethan to stay hidden until we clear this mess. When he hung up, Sarah asked softly, Do you think he still trusts me? Daniel hesitated. He does, he said, but his eyes didn't match his words. Then why hasn't he called? She whispered. Because right now, trust is a weapon, Daniel replied, and everyone's afraid to use it. Meanwhile, in Geneva, Ethan was facing his own storm. Board of directors demanded answers. Vanessa had already presented evidence, forged documents, audio clips of fake conversations, even photos of Sarah meeting with an unknown man. Ethan slammed the table. Those are doctored. But the chairman said coldly, Then prove it. Ethan's fists clenched. I will. Back at the villa, Sarah noticed a hidden drawer beneath the old desk. Inside was a folder marked V Project. She opened it and gasped. Vanessa's name was everywhere. Emails, agreements, and an unsigned contract proposing a merger between Cole Group and Vanessa's company. This must be what she's after, Sarah murmured. Daniel leaned closer. That contract gives her control if Ethan's reputation collapses. She's been planning this for months. They scanned through the pages until Sarah found something unexpected. Vanessa's signature next to Ethan's, but the date was recent. Too recent. She forged it, Sarah said, her voice trembling. She's making it look like Ethan was still working with her. Daniel nodded grimly. We need to get this to Ethan before she buries us both. Suddenly, a sound outside. Tires on gravel. Daniel peeked through the window. We've been found, he said sharply. Stay low. The door burst open, and two men in suits entered, armed. Search everything, one barked. Sarah ducked behind the couch as Daniel tackled one of them. A struggle broke out, the candlelight flickering wildly. Sarah grabbed the folder and ran toward the back exit. She could hear Daniel shouting, Go, don't stop. She sprinted into the rain, clutching the documents against her chest. The storm howled, wind tearing through her hair. Behind her, she heard sirens and gunshots. Her shoes slipped on the wet ground, but she kept running. The villa exploded in light as lightning struck nearby. She finally reached the car, jumped in, and started it with shaking hands. As she drove, tears blurred her vision. Ethan, please answer, she whispered, trying to call him again. But the line was dead. The battery on her phone flashed red and died moments later. She was alone, with the truth in her hands, and the world against her. By dawn, Sarah reached the city outskirts and hid the documents in an abandoned post office box, the same place Ethan once told her was his backup plan. Then she collapsed in exhaustion. Meanwhile, miles away, Vanessa watched from her office window, sipping coffee. Her assistant entered. The wife escaped, he said nervously. Vanessa smiled coldly. Let her run. Every step she takes, the world will believe she's guilty. And somewhere above the clouds, Ethan's plane was finally returning home. But he had no idea that the moment he landed, his empire and his marriage would be on the edge of collapse. The return of the billionaire. The jet touched down just as dawn broke over the skyline. Ethan stepped out, exhaustion etched into his face. He had been awake for 36 hours, fighting rumors, silencing board members, and chasing trails of deception. His first call went unanswered. His second, too. Sarah's phone was off. Something inside him shifted, a cold, urgent fear. He called Daniel next. The line clicked, and a faint voice came through. Ethan, she's safe, but things got bad. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Where is she? The villa? But we were attacked. She ran? Attacked? Ethan's heart sank. By who? There was silence. Then Daniel said softly, Vanessa's men. They wanted the folder. Ethan's expression hardened. Then they won't live long enough to use it. Within hours, Ethan's private security team was mobilized. Helicopters scanned the coast. Black cars moved through the streets, and his name dominated the news. Every headline painted him as the cold billionaire whose wife had gone missing after fraud scandal. But Ethan didn't care about reputation anymore, only finding Sarah. Meanwhile, Sarah awoke in an old warehouse near the city outskirts. She had collapsed from exhaustion and been found by an elderly couple who offered her shelter. The woman handed her tea. You look lost, dear. Sarah nodded weakly. I just need to reach someone. But before she could explain, loud knocks echoed at the door. The old man whispered, They're looking for you. Sarah slipped out the back door and ran through the narrow alleys, clutching her small bag. The streets were wet, the sky gray. She finally reached a public phone booth and called Ethan's office. A secretary answered coldly. "Mr. Cole is unavailable." "Please," Sarah begged. "Tell him it's his wife." But the line went dead. Someone had cut it. Ethan, on the other hand, was in his car speeding through the downtown district when his driver said, "Sir, someone broke into the old post office." Ethan's eyes widened. "Take me there now." They arrived minutes later. Inside the dusty building, Ethan found a hidden box. Sarah's handwriting scrawled across it. Inside were the documents, still dry despite the storm. He flipped through them quickly and froze. "This proves Vanessa forged everything," he muttered. "It's over." But as he turned, a voice echoed behind him. "You're late, Ethan?" Vanessa stood at the entrance, flanked by two men. "Looking for your wife's mess?" she mocked. "You should thank me. I gave her purpose." Ethan glared. "You gave her pain. You stole my name, my trust, and you'll pay for it." Vanessa laughed. "Oh, please. You built an empire on charm and control. I'm just better at your game." She motioned to her men. "Take the folder." Ethan stepped forward, blocking their path. "Try me." The first man lunged, but Ethan struck him down swiftly, years of quiet discipline now unleashed. The second hesitated, then backed off. Vanessa's confidence flickered. "You think this changes anything? The world already believes she's guilty." Ethan's voice was cold as steel. "Then I'll make them believe the truth, starting with you." He took the folder and walked out, as Vanessa screamed after him. Outside, rain began to fall again, washing away the dust. Ethan looked up at the sky, his jaw tight. "Hold on, Sarah," he whispered. "I'm coming." Hours later, his security traced Sarah's call from the phone booth. Ethan drove there himself, ignoring every warning. When he arrived, the booth was empty, but nearby he found her necklace lying in a puddle. He picked it up, his throat tightening. She was here. One of the guards approached. "Sir, tracks lead to the train station." Ethan nodded. "Then that's where we'll end this." At the same moment, Sarah sat alone on a train heading north, staring out the window. The city faded behind her. She didn't know Ethan was only minutes away, or that Vanessa had already set the final trap in motion. The trap at the station. The train station was crowded, filled with voices, luggage wheels, and the sound of rain on the metal roof. Sarah sat near the far end of the platform, her coat drenched, her hands trembling around a cup of cold coffee. Every face around her felt suspicious now. She looked over her shoulder again and again. The folder was gone, but fear still clung to her like a shadow. On the other side of the city, Ethan's car stopped outside the same station. His men spread out, scanning the crowd. He walked fast, his eyes searching every corner. Then, near platform 9, he saw her, sitting alone, looking smaller than he remembered. Relief and sorrow collided inside him. He started walking faster. Sarah stood up when she heard her name. "Sarah!" Ethan's voice cut through the noise. She turned, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Ethan?" she whispered. He rushed toward her, wrapping his arms around her. For a moment, time stood still. But before they could speak, a sharp sound echoed, the click of a camera. Flashes went off. Reporters appeared out of nowhere, shouting questions. "Mrs. Cole, did you really steal from your husband's company? Mr. Cole, are you protecting a criminal?" Guards tried to push them back, but it was too late. The trap had sprung. Vanessa stepped from behind a pillar, smiling for the cameras. "How touching," she said loudly, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "A reunion of guilt and love." But the truth must be shown, right? She handed a flash drive to one of the reporters. Here's the proof of Sarah's confession. The crowd gasped. Sarah looked at Ethan, horrified. He gripped her hand. I know. He turned toward Vanessa, his voice calm but deadly. You really think lies can bury truth forever? Vanessa smirked. In this world, perception is truth. She gestured to the reporters. And perception is mine to control. Ethan stepped closer. You've underestimated love, Vanessa. That's something money can't buy or manipulate. Vanessa laughed. We'll see, because by tomorrow morning, your company will be mine. She walked away, cameras following her. But Ethan didn't chase her. Instead, he whispered to one of his men, Go to Plan B now. The next hour was chaos. Police arrived, crowd control began, and Sarah was taken aside for questioning. Ethan stood beside her, silent but unwavering. Then, as the reporters dispersed, a familiar face appeared, Daniel. His clothes were torn, but he was alive. He handed Ethan a phone. I recorded everything, he said breathlessly. Vanessa's men attacked the villa. I got the footage before they burned it. Ethan looked at him, stunned. That's the proof we need. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Daniel, you saved us. He smiled faintly. I just did what was right. Moments later, Ethan's security escorted them out through a back exit. They drove in silence, the city lights flashing through the rain. Sarah finally spoke, her voice low. Do you think they'll ever believe the truth? Ethan looked at her reflection in the window. They don't have to, he said softly. They just have to see it. That night, Ethan called his media director. Release the footage to every outlet, every channel, every corner of the internet. Within hours, the truth spread like fire. The video showed Vanessa meeting with hired men, forging documents, and paying off reporters. By sunrise, public opinion had flipped entirely. Hashtags trended worldwide. *#justice for Sarah*, and *#cold truth revealed. But Vanessa wasn't finished. As the world turned against her, she prepared one final move, one that could destroy everything Ethan had rebuilt. And as the sun rose, Sarah knew that the hardest part was yet to come, the final strike. The morning after the footage went viral, the world had already changed. News anchors repeated the same headlines. Vanessa Blake exposed, fraud and manipulation uncovered. Social media erupted in fury. The woman who once controlled the narrative was now the villain in every story. But for Ethan and Sarah, peace was still far away. Ethan's phone rang constantly. Lawyers, investors, journalists, everyone wanted a statement. He ignored them all. His focus was on Sarah, who sat quietly by the window, wrapped in a blanket. She still hadn't recovered from the fear, the running, the betrayal. It's over, he told her gently. She looked up, her eyes hollow. No, Ethan. For her, it's just beginning. And she was. Right. Vanessa wasn't done. Somewhere in her penthouse, she watched the news with cold fury. Delete every file, she ordered her assistant. Transfer the remaining funds to the offshore account. If I go down, I'm taking him with me. But her assistant hesitated. Ma'am, the authorities are tracing. Do it, she shouted. Then she took a deep breath, her voice lowering. Prepare the press conference. I'll rewrite my own ending. By afternoon, Vanessa appeared on live television. Her face was pale, her tone calm but venomous. I was betrayed by my partners, she said. The Coles framed me to save themselves. But I will release everything, every secret this empire hides. The threat sent shockwaves through the market. Stocks dropped instantly. Ethan watched in silence, his jaw tightening. She's cornered, Daniel said. and dangerous. Ethan stood. Then we finish this tonight. He grabbed his coat and turned to Sarah. Stay here. But Sarah shook her head. No, I've run enough. If we face this, we face it together. For a moment, he hesitated, then nodded. Together. That evening, they arrived at Vanessa's penthouse. Police were already surrounding the building, lights flashing. Vanessa stood on the balcony, cameras focused on her. She held a USB drive high in the air. This, she shouted, contains everything. Every deal, every name, every lie. Reporters cheered, thinking she held power. But as Ethan and Sarah entered the lobby, Daniel handed him his phone. We intercepted her feed? He said, the USB is empty. She's bluffing. They took the elevator to the top. The doors opened to chaos, flashing lights, shouting reporters, and Vanessa standing defiantly. She saw them and smiled. Ah, the perfect couple, she said mockingly. Come to see me fall. Ethan stepped forward. No, to see you face the truth. He nodded to the officers. They moved in and surrounded her. Vanessa laughed bitterly. Do you think this ends with me? You'll lose everything anyway. The world always forgets the truth. Sarah stepped closer, her voice steady. Maybe, but love remembers. For the first time, Vanessa faltered. Her confidence cracked. The cameras caught it, the flicker of regret, the exhaustion in her eyes. The police handcuffed her quietly. As they led her away, she whispered to Sarah, You won, but someday they'll turn on you too. Sarah looked at her sadly. Maybe, but I'll still choose kindness. Hours later, the press conference concluded. Ethan faced the cameras with Sarah beside him. The truth is simple, he said. Power means nothing without integrity. We built everything on trust, and when that broke, we lost ourselves. But today, we rebuild with honesty, not fear. The world listened. Investors began to return. Employees sent messages of support. And for the first time in months, the storm began to clear. As they drove home under the night sky, Sarah rested her head on Ethan's shoulder. We survived, she whispered. He smiled faintly. No, we endured. But neither of them knew that deep in Vanessa's abandoned penthouse, her assistant was staring at another hidden drive, one she hadn't mentioned to anyone. A new secret, a final weapon. And the story wasn't over yet. The light after the storm. 1 month later, peace had slowly returned. The mansion that once echoed with fear now felt alive again. Soft music, laughter from the staff, sunlight streaming through the windows. But for Sarah, the scars of the past weeks hadn't faded completely. Every knock at the door still made her flinch. Every news headline made her cautious. Ethan noticed it too. One morning, as they shared coffee on the balcony, he said quietly, You don't have to be strong all the time. She smiled faintly. If I wasn't strong, I wouldn't be here. He reached across the table and took her hand. You were stronger than all of us. I should have protected you better. You did, she said softly. You believed in me when no one else did. The world had begun to shift as well. Vanessa's arrest made headlines for weeks. The authorities uncovered a vast network of fraud and manipulation, all traced back to her. She faced years in prison, and her empire collapsed overnight. But one thing remained. Unclear, the hidden drive that vanished the night of her arrest. Daniel was still investigating, tracing every digital footprint. If that drive surfaces, he warned Ethan, it could reopen everything. Ethan nodded. Then we'll be ready. Meanwhile, Sarah decided to do something she had dreamed of. Long before the chaos began, she reopened her old bookstore, the same place where she and Ethan had first met. It was small, humble, and filled with second-hand books that smelled of time and memory. When customers came in, they didn't recognize her as the billionaire's wife. They saw her as Sarah. Kind, quiet, and wise. She liked it that way. One afternoon, as she arranged books on a shelf, a young woman entered. Her dress was simple, her shoes worn. She looked around shyly before whispering, "I'm sorry, I don't have enough money for this one." Sarah smiled warmly. "Take it," she said. "No charge." The girl's eyes widened. "Really?" "Really," Sarah replied. Knowledge should never depend on wealth. The girl thanked her and left, clutching the book to her chest. Ethan, who had been standing near the counter, smiled. "That was exactly what you told me the day we met," he said. Sarah laughed softly. "And you still haven't returned that book." The days grew brighter. The company stabilized, stronger than before. Daniel was promoted to head of security, and loyalty became the new foundation of Ethan's empire. Their story, once twisted by lies, now inspired thousands online. Messages poured in from people saying, "You reminded us what love and honesty mean." One evening, Ethan and Sarah attended a charity gala together, not in luxury, but in simplicity. Sarah wore a plain white dress, elegant and timeless. When they entered, whispers filled the room again, but this time with admiration, not mockery. The host welcomed them with applause. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "tonight's donation comes from Mr. and Mrs. Cole, not in money, but in rebuilding schools for underprivileged children." The crowd rose in ovation. Ethan turned to Sarah. "This is your idea," he said. "No," she replied gently. "It's our redemption." Later that night, as they drove home under a sky full of stars, Sarah leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't gone to that restaurant that night?" Ethan chuckled softly. "Then the world would have missed its most powerful reminder. That respect isn't bought, it's earned." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the quiet hum of the city. Sarah whispered, "We lost so much, Ethan, but we found ourselves." He nodded, "And that's worth everything." As the mansion lights came into view, Sarah looked out the window one last time. The rain had stopped. The world outside shimmered with reflection, clean, renewed, at peace. She smiled and whispered to herself, "The storm was never meant to break us. It was meant to wash us clean." And somewhere far away, in a locked evidence vault, a single drive blinked faintly, waiting, silent, patient, a reminder that even after the light, some shadows remain. The hidden drive. The next morning, the city awakened to a calm sky, unaware that the final chapter of the Cole saga was quietly unfolding behind closed doors. Inside the Cole mansion, Ethan sat in his study, reading the morning paper. The headlines celebrated their redemption, their charity, their love, but his mind wasn't at ease. He couldn't stop thinking about the missing drive, the one piece of evidence that could undo everything. Daniel entered the room, holding a folder. "I've checked every system," he said. "No trace of the fee. Drive online. It's like it never existed." Ethan frowned. "It exists," he said firmly. "Vanessa was too strategic to leave anything unfinished." He looked up. "Keep digging. If she hid something, I want it found." Upstairs, Sarah stood by the window, watching the sunrise. For weeks, she had tried to leave the fear behind, but nightmares still crept in. In them, she saw Vanessa smiling from behind bars, whispering, "You'll never be free?" She shook the thought away as Ethan entered. "Another sleepless night?" he asked softly. She nodded. "It's strange," she said. "Even when the world forgives you, you still struggle to forgive yourself." Ethan wrapped his arms around her. "Then let me carry the rest." Later that day, Sarah visited her bookstore. Business had been good, too good. New customers arrived daily, asking for her personally. One man, however, stood out. He wore a gray coat, a hat low over his face. He bought a book and handed her cash, but when he left, she noticed something fall from his pocket, a small USB drive. She called after him, but he was already gone. Curious, she picked it up. On its surface, engraved faintly, were the initials VB. Her heart skipped a beat. That night, she showed it to Ethan. He stared at it for a long time. "It can't be," he murmured. Sarah whispered, "Do you think it's the one?" He nodded slowly. Only one way to know. They inserted it into a secure laptop. A password prompt appeared, one word only. Sarah thought for a moment, then typed call. Incorrect. She tried again. Love, still wrong. Ethan frowned. Vanessa wasn't sentimental. Think like her. Sarah hesitated. Revenge? She hit enter. The screen unlocked. Files filled the screen. Audio recordings, documents, and videos. One folder was labeled The End. Ethan opened it, and the video began to play. Vanessa appeared, recorded days before her arrest. "If you're watching this," she said, "it means I've lost, but you'll never truly win. Because the truth you defend isn't the truth that built your empire. You hide behind morality, Ethan, but you've made your own deals, one Sarah doesn't know about." Sarah's eyes widened. What is she talking about? Ethan closed his eyes, regret flashing across his face. "Before we met, I did things I'm not proud of. I cut corners, ignored laws. I thought success justified everything." Sarah stepped back. "So she's right?" He shook his head. "Not anymore. I stopped all that the moment I met you. But if this goes public, they'll use it to destroy everything we've rebuilt." Sarah stared at the screen. "Then we destroy it," she said quietly. Ethan hesitated. "If we do, they'll say we're hiding the truth. If we don't, it could ruin innocent people who trusted." U.S. They sat in silence as the fire crackled beside them. Finally, Sarah said, "Maybe truth isn't about what the world sees. Maybe it's about what you choose to live by." She reached for the drive, but before she could remove it, the laptop flickered. A new message appeared. Asterisk back uploading -45%. Complete. Asterisk Ethan's blood ran cold. "It's connected to a live server," he said. She planned this. He yanked the cable, but the upload continued. "We have to find where it's going." Daniel burst into the room. "We traced a signal from the bookstore's Wi-Fi," he said quickly. "Someone planted a transmitter." "There, the man in the gray coat." Ethan grabbed his jacket. "Get the car," Sarah whispered. "I'm coming with you." He looked at her, fear in his eyes. "This could be dangerous." She smiled sadly. "So was loving you, but I did it anyway." They raced through the night, city lights blurring past. At the bookstore, the power was out, the door slightly open. Inside, the laptop used by the mysterious man still glowed faintly. On the screen, the upload bar reached 98%. Ethan shouted, "Pull the plug!" Daniel ripped the cables free, sparks flying. The screen went black. For a moment, silence filled the room. Sarah clutched Ethan's arm. "Did we stop it?" Daniel checked the logs. Almost. But a small part of the data escaped. Someone might still have it. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Then we'll find them. But not tonight." As they left the store, Sarah looked up at the sign above the door, the name she'd painted. Herself. Asterisk the honest page. Asterisk, she whispered. "No matter what truth the world twists, power stays pure." Ethan took her hand, the wind lifting her hair. "We'll face whatever comes next, together." And far away, in a dark apartment, the man in the gray coat watched the final upload complete on his second device. He smiled and whispered, Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Redemption and revelation. The next morning began with sirens in the distance and sunlight spilling through the blinds. The world outside was waking up, but inside the Cole mansion, silence ruled. Sarah sat at the dining table, staring at the untouched breakfast. Her thoughts were heavy, tangled between love, fear, and the unknown man who now held their secret. Ethan entered quietly, his eyes weary. He poured a cup of coffee and sat across from her. "You didn't sleep," he said softly. She shook her head. "Neither did you." They both knew the storm wasn't over. Vanessa might be gone, but her ghost lingered, alive in the form of the mysterious man in the data that escaped. Daniel walked in, holding his tablet. "I traced the upload," he said. "It went to an encrypted address in another country. Whoever has it isn't after money. They're after exposure." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Then we give them something better. The truth on our own terms." Sarah looked at him, surprised. "You want to go public?" He nodded slowly. "No more hiding. If the world needs to know what I did, they'll hear it from me." Daniel frowned. "That could destroy everything you rebuilt." Ethan met his gaze. "Maybe. But if we hide again, we become exactly what Vanessa accused us of being." That afternoon, Ethan called a press conference. Cameras filled the room, reporters buzzing like flies. Sarah stood behind him, her hand trembling slightly, but her eyes steady. Ethan stepped up to the microphone. "For years, I've built an empire I believed in, one founded on ambition and power. But along the way, I made mistakes. I cut corners, ignored warnings, and hurt people I never meant to hurt. When you reach the top, it's easy to forget what honesty feels like. But my wife reminded me. She taught me that wealth without integrity is poverty in disguise." The room fell silent. Ethan continued, his voice strong but emotional. "Vanessa Blake was not the only one to lose herself to greed. I did too. And for that, I take full responsibility. But I will not let one act of darkness define a lifetime of redemption." Cameras flashed as reporters scribbled notes. "From today onward," he said, "the Cole Foundation will focus not on luxury, but on rebuilding communities, education, trust." He turned slightly toward Sarah. "And this time, I won't do it alone." The audience erupted in applause. For the first time in months, the headlines told a story of confession and courage, not scandal. But even as the world celebrated, one figure watched from afar. The man in the gray coat sat in a dim cafe, reading the news on his tablet. He smiled faintly. He finally told the truth. He muttered. Beside him lay a flash drive, the original data. But instead of sending it, he placed it in an envelope marked "Return to Sender." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a courier arrived at the Cole mansion. Sarah opened the package and froze. Inside was the same drive, untouched. Returned. A note was taped to it. Asterisk, truth no longer needs a weapon. Asterisk, Ethan stared at it for a long moment before placing it in a drawer. "Let's leave it there," he said quietly. Sarah nodded. Some stories don't need an ending, just peace. In the following weeks, life began to breathe again. The bookstore expanded, becoming a haven for readers, dreamers, and thinkers. The Cole Foundation launched its first scholarship program. Sarah often spoke at small events, sharing her message. Dignity doesn't come from the clothes we wear, but from the kindness we choose. Her words spread far beyond what she imagined. One evening, during a charity dinner, a little girl approached her shyly. "Mrs. Cole," she said, "my mom used to say rich people don't care. But you proved her wrong." Sarah smiled, kneeling to meet her eyes. "Tell your mom something for me," she said softly. "Wealth means nothing unless it helps someone." else stand taller. The girl nodded and hugged her before running back to her seat. Later that night, Sarah and Ethan stood outside under the stars. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked. Ethan looked at the horizon. "I think the worst is. But life? It's never about avoiding storms. It's about learning to dance in the rain." He smiled, turning to her. "And with you, I'll always find the rhythm." She laughed quietly, tears glistening in her eyes. They stood there in silence, the air cool and clean after the long battle. The empire was no longer built on money, but on meaning. And though the world still whispered their name, it now did so with respect, not judgment. Sarah looked at Ethan, her voice barely above a whisper. "We started with an old dress," she said, "and ended with something no one can buy, redemption." And as the final light of evening faded, the story that began with shame ended with grace, a reminder that true wealth isn't counted in dollars, but in hearts healed and lives changed.